Let's see. We should be live. Let's see. Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm reading the comments. People are saying they've brought their coffee. Yay! I've got my coffee. I'm reading through the comments too. Some people said they really enjoyed the session. So I'm just gonna introduce myself again, remind you of what I did, and I'm gonna answer some questions. So I did see a question real quick here. It says, love the presentation. You mentioned using a slow drying glue. So there's a couple of different slow drying liquid adhesives that work really well. I think it also depends on your area. We live in more of a desert climate, so everything dries fast. If you live in more of like a humid climate, it's going to take longer. There's the new Artiste from scrapbook.com and Barely Art are two that I use that are slower drying. But I'm going to remind you real quick of the cards I made. I think a lot of you are commenting real quick. So this was the Christmas card. So I taught you guys how to use your shape dies, or someone here said she used her shape punches, which is a great idea. Or if you're a Cricut user, you could do the shapes on your Cricut. And I showed you how to do 3 different flowers. This one was with hearts. And then I kind of gave you an alternative that was non-Christmas. This one was with circles. And then we did one with hexagons. All right. So that's what I taught you in class. So I'm hoping you guys are getting some great ideas. A lot of you commented in the Facebook group about that you've seen a few of them before, but that it was kind of, neat to see that some of you hadn't seen these before. So Catherine said, how did you stitch the rectangular strip on the Fa La La card? Okay. So I don't know if you can see behind the other side. I have a sewing machine in my craft room. I'm going to try to bring that up to the camera. You can see the stitching. I do a lot of stitching on my cards and my scrapbook pages. And this sewing machine, other side, Carrie, this sewing machine is designated for paper crafting. So I bought it specifically for paper crafting. I don't know if you can see, it's got like an extended table on the back or on the side, so that when I do my 12 by 12 scrapbook pages, everything lays nice and flat. It is designated solely for paper crafting, just because if you try to stitch fabric and you try to stitch paper, you're going to have to switch your needles back and forth. Paper does also leave a lot of debris in your sewing machine, so you are going to have to clean it more often. If you went to my store and grabbed the free download, so you should have been able to get the free download in that shop. There's also a free download that's called 10 helps. I can't remember, 10 tips for sewing on paper. So if you want to go grab that from my shop too. Have I ever used colored vellum for my flowers? Great question, Chris. Yes, I am. Oh, I love vellum. If I have an excuse to use vellum, I will use vellum. I will tell you, if you're going to do the folds with the vellum, you're definitely going to want a thinner vellum, because if the vellum is super thick, there's a chance that it might crack. If you guys have ever played with vellum, you know that sometimes the thicker stuff will crack with folds. I also suggest that you definitely score the vellum. If you have a scoreboard, or I usually score on my paper trimmer, just because vellum it's not as forgiving as paper. So I hope that helped. So Stephanie asked, she doesn't know much about dies, but she's noticed that most presenters, when they're die cutting sentiments, they stack multiples. So it actually depends on the die and it depends on your paper. For most of us, it's just a lot easier to do multiples at once because you're running them all through. Especially with this, I knew I needed like 8 little hearts. And so I did, multiples at a time. Some dies will let me do up to like 3 to 4 sheets of paper. Some dies will only do one sheet of paper. So you might have to like kind of play with your dies. You can also use like a shim if you need a little bit more pressure. Sometimes like I said, it really depends on the die. Any dies that have stitching on them, you like the little stitching, etching, stitching, or if it's got score marks in it, sometimes those details don't come out as well if you stack the paper. Like as you slowly move down, you lose the stitching and you lose the embossing details. So just be aware of that too. So Angela asked, what is my favorite flower and my favorite flower to make? Oh goodness, that's a huge question. So um I'm a gardener, so that's like asking, what's your favorite child? I do love poppies. Poppies I really enjoy. Um, they're hard to grow here though, so I don't get to see them very often. As far as flowers to make, anything. If you take a look at any of my creations online, like anytime I can make a three-dimensional flower, a magnolia, a poppy, anything, either with my Cricut or with dyes, I just love making just about any type of flower. So she asked, is it Delina or Delina? Delina, probably. What weight of paper do you use for the flowers so they don't crack? So Vellum is the only thing that I worry about cracking. There are some cardstocks, like especially the white core cardstock, that if you notice that it is kind of cracking and you're seeing that white core, you may have to fold it the opposite way. So the thing about cardstock to know is that the I just totally lost my train of thought. That train left the station. The um the paper, the way it's designed, some of the why can't I think of the words here? It basically has where it's woven a certain direction. Um and if you fold against that direction, against the grain, you might get some of that cracking in your white core cardstock. So then just cut it the opposite way that goes with the grain. Okay, so that's the only time I have an issue other than vellum. Sometimes you see the white core on cardstock. Other than that, I don't know that I've really had any. Thank you guys. You guys are helping me come up with the words. I don't know that I've had any issues with cracking other than that thicker cardstock. So Lisa asked, do I prefer making flowers using dedicated flower dyes or basic shape dyes? Both. I am one that I like to find multiple ways to use an item. So, like, I recently did a project where I used strawberry dyes and I turned them into raspberries. So I'm definitely one that tries to find multiple ways to use things. So I think it honestly depends on just the time and what I feel like doing for the day. So as long as it's like way outside the box, I'm definitely going to be doing it. So Catherine asks, does the sewing machine have special settings along with a different needle? So my sewing machine, it doesn't have like special settings as far as just for paper. I do have a lot of different stitches on there. I do suggest, a lot of people suggest that you use a denim needle with paper just because it can go through the paper a little bit easier and it doesn't dull as quickly. I use a regular standard sewing needle and it works just fine. I do have to change it a little bit more often than if I were using paper or if I were using fabric. But I haven't had any issue. I mean, I use just the standard sewing thread. I use the standard sewing settings on there. I do change the tension needs to be a little bit different. And your stitch width, it's always better if you use kind of a wider stitch because if they get too close together, you basically are kind of tearing the paper, not really adding stitches. So Carla said, loves the flowers, but can't find the freebie. So you should, under my video, there should have been a link to go to the freebie, which will take you to my website. And if you scroll all the way down in that website, you're going to see where there is a freebie. And there is a click here basically to get the freebie. And it will take you to my shop site. And then there is a coupon code that you need to enter. So all of that is on that website. And that link is right below the video. So she's been trying to, and several tries, and she's getting, yeah. So if the download, sometimes the download, you do get that spinning circle of doom. Um, Sometimes, like I've noticed on summit days, if it spins a little bit, it's just because there's a lot of people who are hitting it. I've also noticed that it works better in Chrome or Safari. So if you're trying to do it on a mobile device, sometimes it kind of locks up a little bit and you might want to go do it on your desktop. Um, you do have 24 hours here to try to snag it. So if something does happen, though, go ahead and send me an email and we can go through. Just like send me a screenshot in your email and say, this is where I'm stuck, and I'll help you through it. So Cynthia asked, what type of thread do I use on paper sewing? I actually prefer either 100% cotton or a poly cotton blend. But I've also used, I've used rayon if I want, like I've done like a thicker rayon thread in there to just kind of get that shine. Um, I don't know. I've used all kinds of them. You just kind of have to experiment with the stitch, the tension, and the stitch width depending on the thread you're using. The stuff that's like, I keep going to the wrong side. The stuff that's in there right now is just 100% cotton. So it works for me all the time. I just, on my Amazon store, I have a link to, like, it was like a multi bundle of thread and matching bobbins, and that's basically what I use. It's really simple. So Loretta asks, what weight of paper am I using? And have I cut the patterns on a Cricut instead of using dies? Great question. So weight of paper is, I've used all kinds. Basically from like the really thin paper that you can get in just about any kit to up to like a cardstock. And I've been able to create the flowers. As far as making them in the Cricut, yes, that is something that you can do. You can do it very simply. In my video, I explain like the sizes of the hearts, the circles, you know, the shapes that I used. So you can just go into Cricut Design Space and add that shape to your canvas. And then size it to what you need, and then just, you know, duplicate it the 10 times, 8 times, how many ever times, you know, it's suggested. Um, if you want the Cricut to score it for you, you can actually add a score line in the middle. On my YouTube channel, I have a video. I do 5-minute Cricut classes on my YouTube channel. And there's one that is called How to Add Score Lines. So if you don't know how to add score lines to a shape, that's a great video. And you could even add the score lines right in all of those shapes. And then all you would have to do is cut them out, run, you know, score them, and you would have all of the shapes that you needed for your flower. Have I ever worked with fabric adhesive sheets? So Cynthia, are you talking about the ones that are iron on? So like the ones that you would iron onto the fabric? Um, and I kind of just want to know like how you are asking, like how I would use them. Susan, what is my favorite coffee? Do I prefer cold or hot? Yes, you. I love that question. Favorite coffee. So there is a company that is called Captain Jack's, and they make some really great coffee. We also have Caribou Coffee here, and I don't do iced very much. Sometimes in the summer, Colorado hasn't been very hot this year. Sometimes I do iced. Usually it's hot. I am a bit of a coffee snob. I do have, you know, a special coffee maker. I also have like a coffee press. I have, you know, a lot. And I do like flavored. Hazelnut and coconut are my favorite flavors, but I do all kinds. So Laura said, what adjustment do you make to the sewing machine tension when sewing paper? So I usually keep it on my machine. I keep it at about 3 or 4 because, you know, if you think about it, your paper is a little bit thinner than if you had some fabric. Well, it could be thicker or thinner. It depends on what you're using. Usually mine's cardstock. And it needs that tension is helping, you know, to kind of pull it through, and it's helping to make sure those stitches are tight. So I usually set mine at about 3 or 4. Uh, I would suggest though, it's really going to depend on your sewing machine. I have like a pile of scrap paper I keep nearby. So if I'm trying a new stitch or, I want to see, what I need on that paper, then I can kind of fine tune it. Mine usually stays though around 3 or 4. Right. Yes, the Cricut videos are both on my website and on YouTube. So if you go to misscarriescreations.com, there's a little Cricut link at the top of the menu, and literally all my 5-minute Cricut classes are listed there. Or if you go to YouTube, I have a 5-minute Cricut class playlist, and they're all listed there. So we're in Colorado. So I am in Northeast Colorado. We are kind of like desert plains. We're about 45 minutes away from the mountains, about 45 minutes away from Wyoming, about an hour away from Nebraska. We're kind of really centralized, which is kind of nice. But it's a small, tiny town. So it's great. I'm not in like a big city or anything. So great question. Is this the card I will be using for Christmas cards? And if I have started? So yeah, this might be one that we use. My husband and we send out probably about 200 Christmas cards a year. So I try to kind of make them all year round. And I kind of got a stockpile of some that were left over from years past. I am also one that is not against using kits. Okay, I have gone onto websites and there are kits where you can do like a 20 pack, and then I kind of update them with my own stamps or a couple of die cuts or things. So yeah, I have already started. I've got like a little stockpile because we send out so many. The reminding you of the size, let me grab a ruler here. So she asked if I could remind her of the size of the hearts and the circles. I'm going to double check here because I believe they were about 1 inch. So yeah, the hearts were about 1 inch for the larger ones. And they're 1/2 inch hearts for the smaller layer. So I'm going to bring that up to the camera again. You can see there's like a small set of hearts inside. Oh, thank you. And then yeah, the circle, and in the video I talked to you guys that like yeah, I'm trying to think. I think the circle was a 1.5 or 2. Yeah. So I know in the video I showed you guys like a super large circle just because it's easier for you to see. But I did, yeah, they are a little bit smaller once you put them together. So Melinda, that's a good question. The best way to mail these cards with the flowers. So let me see. Mine, now I'm going to kind of hold this up. Let's see if we can see. I do have 2 layers of foam, and then I have, sorry, my arm is sore today. I have a little button on the top and I have thread. So if you didn't do the button, if you didn't do the foam, you can see they really aren't that thick. So if you, the flowers actually will go through the mail just fine without all of the excess stuff. If you do want to add all the pretty bling, I usually just put them in more of a padded envelope, or the ones that have like a lot of stuff on them. Those are ones that I usually hand deliver to people. Tiffany asked, when did I start card making? So actually it was only about 10 years ago. I started scrapbooking about 28 years ago when our kids were little. And then I took like a 15-year break. And then I came back and I started learning how to use the Cricut, and I taught Cricut classes. And then I kind of fell into card making and really enjoy it. And then, when you're a scrapbooker, you always have extra stuff left over. So I think that's kind of where the card making fell into place, because you just have all those little extra scraps. And so it was just figuring out what to do with them. And I think card making for me is fun because it's a shorter project sometimes. What kind of flowers do you recommend for a masculine card? Good question. I actually, I have done the round flowers. So the circular flowers work really well on the masculine cards. If you use some masculine colors, they work just fine. I actually really like the hexagon one for masculine cards. if you were to put this in like some more outdoorsy colors, it would be really great. We have a lot of boys in our house, so I do a lot of masculine stuff. But yeah, I like the circle and especially the hexagon for the masculine. And you know, all the flowers work. You just have to change out the colors. Do I have a template to make poinsettia flowers? She has some old buttons. You know, I have never folded a poinsettia flower. That's a great question. That's now I'm like thinking, that would be a fun one to make. So, that's a good question. I have not made a folded poinsettia before, but I am sure there's probably one out there. I usually use a die for mine. So Judy asked, is there a way to do textured embossing without the press? Okay, so you're wondering if you could do like just do like embossing as far as like an embossing folder, and you don't want to like go out and have to buy any more items, right? Yeah, rolling pin. I was just going to say that too. Rolling pins are great. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy a rolling pin. Is great. And I've also seen, if you also Google cereal box embossing folders, there's a lot of people who make their own. What are my must-have tools for making cards? Oh, good question, Lisa. I'm a cheapskate. I'll tell you that. I'm very frugal. So everything kind of needs to be multi-purpose. Definitely like your scissors. A T-square is something I recommend for people who like things nice and straight. I also tell people purchase a stamping press versus stamping blocks, just because you get more use out of a stamping press, especially if you're a beginning crafter. And then it's kind of up to choice. I mean, some people are not stampers and some people prefer die cuts over stickers. So honestly, you can just start with scissors and a ruler and go for it. Oh, Tiffany, what do you think my oldest supply is in my stash other than me? Um, my oldest supply, I don't know if I can like move to the side here. There we go. I don't know. I'm like backwards here. Okay, let's try this the other way. Right there is a very, very, very old die cut machine. And the only reason I keep it is because it has vintage lettering and teal colored dragonflies on it, which are like, you know, some of my favorite things to have. It works. It still kind of works. It's lost some of its pressure, but I think that's the oldest thing that I have here in my craft room. Loretta, which stamping press do I prefer? You know, honestly, I think it is really up to the user. There's a lot of them out there. Some of them have the door that kind of goes over. Some of them are more of like a pressure press. There's a lot of them that are out there. So I think, I mean, I have a Tim Holtz one. I have a Misty one. I have like a We Are Memory Keepers like press one. Just because I've let people try them before. So I think it honestly just kind of depends on what you're comfortable with. Really, I don't, I'm one that kind of is like, you know, use what fits within your budget and what you're comfortable with. I mean, I do like that, you know, that's why the way I think. So good question. What's the difference between a stamping press and a stamping block? And then a stamping positioning tool. So those are all three different things. A stamping press is more of, let me see if I can find one. I do have one sitting here. Let me see if I can grab it out of here. So the stamping press is more of like, some of them are more of like the hinged. So your stamp goes here, you ink it, and then you press down. Okay, so that's more of like your stamping press. Some of them are more of like, you know, you put the stamp on, you ink it, and then you press it down onto the paper. A stamping positioner is more of like a, it almost looks like a T ruler that helps you get your stamp where you need to push it, where you need to put it. And with stamping positioners, you're still using the block. So they're usually like an acrylic block that you can put those clear stamps on and then just use press down by hand. I hope that helped describe it a little bit better. Do I make my my own envelopes? No. I wish I had time to do that. I know that a lot of people love to make their own envelopes. I actually go to Amazon has where you can buy like, 500 envelopes in A2 size. For my slimline cards, I just use the standard billing envelopes. Then what are those, 9 by 3.5 or something like that, 9 by 4. I don't do anything fancy with the billing envelopes. I might stamp the outside of them or add some paper or something, but I just buy them on bulk online. So I'm trying to, oh yeah, that's a good, someone also said another mailing idea is to do the thin foam. That's a good idea. We did that for our daughter's wedding invites. All right, so I'm gonna keep going through the questions, okay, and I'll answer them on YouTube and stuff. If you have any more questions though for me, go ahead and put those in the Facebook group, or you can add them. I'll check YouTube later. You can always find me on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and TikTok, Pinterest, Miss Carrie's Creations, all over the place. That's where you can find me. So if you ever have a question, go ahead and feel free to reach out. And please share your cards. I have already seen a couple people create these flower cards, and they have turned out super cute. So feel free to share them with me. All right. Oh, thank you, Kathy. I'm glad you enjoyed. Chris, yes, your coffee is gone. Mine's about 3/4 down. I'm so glad you enjoyed stuff. I hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll talk to you guys later.